think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
you didn't have the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I'm one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the winner.
Oh, hey everybody, how's it going?
I'm calling you winner because you have been taking some good wins today. Some well-deserved wins after you usually take so many L's. How's life, Paul?
I do. It's been good. 4th of July was busy, but it's finally calming down for us out this direction. And life has gone back to normal, sort of, which has allowed me to play a bit more variety of games lately. How have you been doing?
Surviving rains. Like, we had a flood in my house yesterday. So
Jeez.
that was fun. That was funny. Just I was in my room, and then I start seeing like water pouring down some from the walls. I was like, oh no. And then I got out of my room, and then I see like that there's like drops, like, because it was like pouring rain. And it's and you know how sometimes in a house, if we have like an upper floor that's like a little bit more wide open, and this rain came in with like winds, so it had like a bunch of water. And then water tries to like escape from somewhere, so it escaped down the floor. So that was funny. It made me like reorganize my room, and because I was like, ooh, the water where it's falling from my wall is where a bunch of the cables for my consoles are. Oh no.
Oh man.
So that was funny, but nothing got damaged, thank God. But
that's good.
Yeah, the Central Americas are getting like beaten down to a pulp by these rains. It's raining way too much. Thankfully not right now, but it will rain again sometimes, so I have to just be wary. And they're not even hurricanes. That's what's funny.
Yeah, those tropical rains, we're getting a few of those right now, because the heat wave finally broke, and it's been raining every single day lately, where it's gonna rain probably in like the next 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, hopefully you don't get Ida 2.0.
I am really hoping not, because I don't think any of us in this city can take that again.
Yeah, especially like it usually comes in waves for you, right? Obviously there's like a hurricane, so you're always like in the cusp of getting hit by one, and then it would like curb. Yeah. Ida was the one that actually like didn't curb, was actually going in, right?
Smacked the heck out of us, and it's still like technically missed by about 30 miles. But
if that's what missed was, that how much destruction, I can't imagine one that doesn't miss.
If it had gone just like a little bit more, I think most of the city might have gotten wiped out from the winds, because that's what happened to Lake Charles and some of the areas west of us, and it was bad.
Yeah, I'll never forget that video of someone that was in the hospital looking at the winds of Ida, and then seeing like, I don't know if it was a chair that was like floating and then hit the window. It looked insane. So it's like, hopefully you don't have to suffer through that. And
I really hope at the worst we get just a couple of tropical storms this year, because we had like back-to-back years of some craziness. So really hoping this time.
Yeah. But until then, we can always escape for a little bit, because this is the X Button, our gaming podcast that posts every Wednesday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And also, before we go in, I just want to give a shout out to Washington Post journalist Gene Park. We have mentioned him a couple times in this show, and I like him a lot because he's very raw. It's very interesting to always get someone that is from mainstream media that actually covers games in a non-ignorant way, because he's an actual gamer. And he's because sometimes once in a while you'll see the New York Times or all these other stupid papers decide to write about games, and they write about them like in the most stupid way possible, like what happened with Elden Ring and Red Dead Redemption 2 a few years back. Gene Park is like, he could easily be at an IGN or all of that, like in a legit gaming site, and write that stuff, and he does it in a way that is very professional and very thought-provoking. He announced he has cancer yesterday, and that hit me like a truck, because that sickness is something that it's a little traumatizing how it has hit my family many times. And what's been sad is that he got COVID last December, and he had just remained ill since then, because I follow him on Twitter.
Goodness, so he's had it for a while.
Yeah, he thought he had long COVID. That's what they, because apparently there's a few cases that when you get COVID, you get this, you keep the symptoms for like an extended period of time. That's like something that they're still trying to find out, that if they can treat that, because obviously like the vaccines can treat someone that can help with symptoms that go out after 10 days, like what happened to me in January when we came back to the show and I was still like recovering from COVID from New Year's Eve. He thought he'd had that, but then he was like, okay, this is getting too much. He went to get tested and actually went to a hospital, and he gave the prognosis yesterday, and man, he trended on Twitter. That just tell you how much he's loved. That everyone like ports
many very weird AI segments. Like one was J-pop, one was music.
Yes,
but I mean,
it's so funny because he's Hawaiian in this, but when you look at him, he's kind of Asian.
Oh,
so it would make sense. Like maybe he has many people from maybe Japanese people that follow him that were pouring love for him. But I think anyone that's in that situation, getting that kind of outpouring of love, that just warms my heart, because
absolutely. Because I mean, it's such a isolating type of sickness, because you either have a lot of people around you or you feel very alone. And I've lost too many grandparents and family friends to it, so the whole process sucks. So I feel for him and his family.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for the best for him, because he like in a gaming industry where there's so many people that are dumb, that are writing that it's so easy to clown. Look what GameSpot recently retweeted yesterday, an article from like 3 years ago about Final Fantasy VII Bros. Like Gene Park is like legit. He has, if you go to his Twitter, he pinned something. He made a great op-ed about how we're living in basically Kojima time, with like all the things that happen, and he makes the case for why, and it's like it's so thought-provoking. He's such a great writer, and I hope he pulls through. And he's keeping like good, he's keeping good energies, but hoping for the best for that, because I know that's like the worst thing that can happen for you. But enough of anything, Saul and Paul. Let's get into a little bit of an escape. What have you been playing?
I obviously continued playing God of War for a very brief time after our last session. I had just finished the storyline, talked a bit about my final thoughts on that, and really the only thing I continued to play after that point is I finished the Valkyrie storyline,
including the Valkyrie Queen. Yeah.
Even on easy was the
challenge.
It was a challenge. I died like 3 or 4 times before I got it right, and it's like a sliding scale of how sitting up I am, because most of the game I've been just
you can't fight her laying back. You have to
enjoying it, and like I die a couple times and I'm like, oh okay, let's focus here. Let's crack the neck. Let's get ready, and then I was able to clear it out. But it's funny how even on the easiest difficulty, that is no slouch.
She's meant to be like the Raven's Peak of that game, kind of like the Metroid Dread final boss, but she's optional. She's
Thank God. If I had to fight her, I think my initial impression of God of War would have been way worse.
Yes.
So I'm glad
for everyone
that I could revisit that way later and just sit with the amazing visuals.
Now imagine
system
me
of combat. Yeah.
Now imagine me during 2020, the pandemic, when I did my Gimme God of War run, and then
I don't know how you did it.
When I saw because it finally hit me why I replayed that game, because I saw the Destiny streamer Glad on Twitch. He was actually going through that game when he was taking a break from Destiny, and I saw he actually beat the Queen and gave me God of War, and then I got that itch of like, could I do it? Could I actually do it? And I did, and it took me 2 weeks every day playing. That's how tough, because you can get like killed by one hit with her, and she has like all the moves from all the Valkyries, so.
And they're very fast for some of them. They're like that jump up move, if you're doing any other move, it's over and like half your health is gone. So I'm sure I'm like, give me God of War, it's even worse.
Oh yeah, so it's like and I only did it because there's not even a trophy attached to it. I only did it just because I wanted to try it myself, and I got rewarded with even cooler armor. I sent you a build of the Zeus armor you can get from Gimme God of War, New Game Plus, beating her. Eventually, then you just like one hit kill everything. So if you properly spec.
I think my biggest challenge with something like that is whenever they give you armor like that after the hardest boss or whatever, it's like the rest of the game almost doesn't like there's nothing to use it on,
Yeah.
So
That's why
I
you
might,
would go back to, in that case, you
yeah.
would do another Gimme God of War run with that armor on. So.
Right, because that's where you'd really get it from, and I do
Mhm.
appreciate that it's got more of the Greek feel to it, like Kratos from God of War 2, where he
Mhm.
was the God of War, and that it's awesome armor. Enjoyed the heck out of it. But anyway, I only played that for a very brief time.
Mhm.
The next thing that I played was The Last of Us 2.
Yeah, so
I revisited it.
yeah, you went from the critically acclaimed 2018 exclusive PS4 exclusive to the also critically acclaimed 2021 that doesn't have the same equal love from the fans.
I
At least
truly
in Odyssey.
don't know what really possessed me to decide on it. I think it's like in that collection of giant Indiana Jones warehouse that is my brain and
Mhm.
memories. God of War must be like right next to Last of Us Part 2,
Mhm.
just kind of in its category area of games that made me think or made me think a lot and remember things. And man, I had some thoughts
Yeah.
putting that game in and restarting it. We started an entire debate in our group chat about it.
That I wish Zach was here for.
I'm not gonna dive too far into a lot of the story related things of it. I'll mention more just as far as mechanically. I'll start with the good things. The game feels awesome.
And you're playing on a
and
PS5. There's improvements already.
I'll tell you the way that I'm playing it, because it's very different from a regular playthrough. I am playing it on Grounded Plus with permadeath. So if I die, I have to play the chapter over again. Because there's trophies related to that. However, you can still have all of the accessibility options on. So I've got certain things like infinite ammo, infinite crafting, and things die in one shot. You would think that would make the game completely broken. However, it does not. Actually, let me correct myself. The accessibility options are separate. There's some other things like you can be prone and they can't see you and stuff like that. What I did was a glitch that allowed me to get those other items that normally are blocked on Grounded. So all that is to say, I've been playing this game like freaking Mission Impossible, rushing through, headshotting things, one-shotting everything. However, I die pretty quick. And as Ellie, it was decent. Like I felt like I was steamrolling most challenges because there was an accessibility thing that said that enemies' accuracy is severely depleted, so they'll miss more shots that should kill you. However, your health is very low, and I think when I switched it over to Abby, I forget that her stats are different, and I must not have updated her health as much, because one headshot will kill me at full health. And I was talking to y'all about that whole process. So it's this really tense game of cat and mouse, using all of these cheats to stay alive and put as much damage into enemies as possible before they get to me. And when they get to me, it's like an instant kill.
Everyone go to Dork of Art on Twitter and watch one clip that Paul posted from his playthrough with Javi, that the accuracy, like the quick reaction, and you not even, because you don't even have lock-on mode, right?
No, that's one thing that I didn't put on.
So there's the accuracy of like you like jumping down and immediately running to someone that sees you and immediately headshotting him without him like without him finishing saying "I found her" or something. It was like hilarious.
It was gosh, it felt like it was some scene out of the Book of Eli or something, where I drop down into the segment, a guy panics and shouts to everybody else, and before he can finish his round, I'm just aimbot him in the head. And that's not normally my skill level, but I can touch into that ultra instinct every once in a while, and it feels really good. So I'm glad that I captured that on video, because it was amazing. And sometimes I get that click, and it the whole game feels so good, because you don't have to worry about the accuracy as much, because I turned off the weapon sway at least. And then with infinite ammo, I can just kind of spam it. It wasn't as much this anxiety of like, I don't know if I'm going to hit this person who's 5 feet in front of me.
I'm just glad that the game allows you to play it that way.
Because
it gives you so many granular ways that you can tweak it too.
And it wasn't like
playing it.
where something like Horizon Forbidden West felt very like numbers driven with its damage giving and damage receiving. It was more like a general, hey, this is gonna lower accuracy for them, and this is gonna help you a little bit. It's like, all right, that's all I need.
But Horizon's an RPG.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
is.
thing.
I'm not
The
like
Last of Us
using
not.
that as a dig against it. I was just saying it's more like it's a very different approach to it, but I appreciate that they're both there, especially in this modern day and age where some people just don't have the time to deal with the BS of certain things. And it's really cool that you can still get to experience something as immersive as The Last of Us without having to constantly pad out your time searching for other items to be able to play the game in the next combat encounter. Because I realized if I didn't have that, combat encounters would be really frustrating, because all you could do is just go prone and crawl and try to get past the enemies before they see you. And now it feels like things are a little more even, especially on these later difficulties. But yeah, so I'm enjoying myself. It's just a really long game, even with all of those improvements.
It's 25 hours minimum. And,
it's a lot.
It took me 30 my first run and 26 my second run because I platinumed that game. So I put like 56 hours total in that thing back in 2020. So
it's so much, but I'm glad that I'm just trying it out and kind of filling out some robustness of what's been going on lately and trying to revisit games. Besides that, I just did some very different games. Mark of the Ninja Remastered. It was a PC game like forever ago, back when I was in college. 360, really? Wow. Well, it looks amazing because, I mean, obviously remastered. They've like either animated or put up the resolution on all of the little 2D characters. And it's just like a cute little platformer stealth situation going on. I've been bouncing around for whatever reason. It really reminds me of the TMNT game for the Wii back in the day. Did you ever play that, like the CG animated?
Yeah, I had it on 360.
There was something about the platforming that was really slick in that game that I feel like a lot of games even now don't really capture, but Mark of the Ninja fortunately is one of those.
Yeah, that TMNT game was made by Ubisoft, so there was they were using some of the engines that they used for Prince of Persia. So
okay. Well, that would explain a lot, and it felt really good. So Mark of the Ninja was really doing well, and it actually reminded me a lot of the Strider game for the PS4. So that actually made me want to go download that after I finish this, but it's really short. I mean, I've been playing it for like every once in a while, like a mission here and there, and I'm almost done with the game. And I think it's more about replaying it, getting better scores, and like unlocking costumes and other weapons and stuff. But either way, it's fun little game, and I got it for like $4, so good move there. Next was Mega Man X. It was a game that I played a little bit of.
Which collection? Because there's two.
The first one. So it was the first Mega Man X actual one called Mega Man X and on the SNES, and that it's still a really hard game.
Yeah.
Holy moly. It's even with like the assisted mode, I think it gives you like an extra life or something, but that's really it.
Yes.
And
still tough. They're still really tough.
Having to redo those missions from the start still, and at least like you can hit the triangle button when you lose all your lives to save your progress instead of having to like manually write down the code and everything. I feel like they could have done a little more with it. However, it looks great and it feels great, so that's really all that matters. It's more
those
just
games
quality
have
of
always
life.
felt like those games have always had great gameplay. So it's like,
I think I struggled back in the day because I couldn't understand the whole like hitting two buttons at once to do things, because there's this whole hit the dash button and the X button, you do this crazy jump, and like younger me just could not fathom like, how do I get my thumb to hit both? Because I mean, I was smaller, but now I got giant sausage thumbs, so I'm good.
Much easier. And in this
yeah.
game you can remap controls. I put the dash and the shoulder buttons.
Oh my gosh, I'm immediately doing that the second I replay it, because it's so frustrating to do that.
That's the key.
Man.
It's like it's so much easier to liberate two fingers.
Oh, for real. And I mean, it felt like everything was jammed together anyway, so I'm going to do that for sure. But yeah, that was fun. And then similarly, in the sort of cyberpunk tech future style game, I played something called Anno Mutationum. This, you would know it if you saw it, but the name itself sounds like gibberish. Basically, it's this really cool pixel art. I don't want to call it an RPG, but it's very clearly telling a specific style of story. But then there are like dungeons where it plays like a 2D hack and slash.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah. So, and it's really cool because it's blending pixel art characters with 3D assets in the background with a pixel style over it. So it's got this really awesome volumetric lighting and feel to it. Almost like, you know, how Octopath Traveler had like, you're clearly in a 3D space, but all the pixel art is around you. So it's kind of like that, but I feel perfected in some ways. And because it's very cyberpunk-ish, it's got like neon.
I like this.
It's really cool.
I'm watching the trailer right now as you're talking.
Yeah. So that was actually one of the ones that I had suggested we get on sale together once, and then it ended up not being on sale. But however, I will say the pacing is a little weird, and it feels like the story and the combat are not connected in some way. Like right now it's you're running through the city, you're talking to some people, they're trying to build these characters you don't really know yet, but like they're acting as if they've known each other for years. So I think I've read reviews of it, and they said you have to get through like the first quarter of the game, and then after that point everything starts to make more sense. So if I had to dock it for anything, the pacing and the plot seem a little weird. However, the gameplay is pretty dope because you're like, I mean, obviously, yeah, hack and slash, you got combos, launcher moves to knock enemies into the air. You got a gun move that can like keep them in the air. So there's a lot of like possibility for what you can do and a lot of different weapons you can use.
Yeah, it's a beat them up, right? It's just like you smash buttons
like,
for combat.
Right, but it's only in very specific situations because, like I was saying, it's a lot of dialogue first, run here, run there, like Deus Ex kind of style. But then you go into an area where it's like, all right, combat time, and then your character has a different outfit on, and then it's just combat. And then, all right, we're done with the combat. We're going back to dialogue. So if there's anything, I wish it was a little connected, but it's really fun and it's really cool to look at.
How much did it cost you, or do you just buy it just not on sale?
It was on sale for $15, I think.
Oh, okay.
It was $24. I know that. Not on sale. So it was like, hey, that's worth it to me to try it out. But yeah, so that's everything I've been playing. Alejandro, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I still kept playing God of War, but it's like I have this thing when I play God of War, I want to do like 100% run where I do every single thing as it comes out, from like side quests and all that, because I just enjoy the narrative of that game so much that I just play it very methodically. But having done that other times before, it's not like I'm doing it all at once, especially because I kind of want to keep savoring it. And in a way, I was still trying to savor it because I didn't even know if the sequel was actually going to come out this year. We're going to have to talk about that later after what happened last week. So I didn't want to like burn that excitement. So I was like, okay, I'll pivot to other stuff also, as I also going to keep playing this because I had mentioned it in the Nintendo Direct section of last episode when we were talking about Mega Man Battle Network, the collection. We're talking about the great collections, and I had mentioned that Mega Man Zero was one that I really wanted, but it was too expensive. That same day you texted me a picture, like, it is, and I immediately bought that sucker. And I started playing it, and I tell you, just like Mega Man X, that game is hard as balls. Ooh. Holy crap. That game, I put it in assisted mode also, and I kept dying to this boss that you're in this like compartment that lifts the floor in specific times, so you have to like move really quickly before you get smashed in the top. So yeah, it's like, yeah, this is hard, harder than I anticipated, but that's just Mega Man. Mega Man and hard has always gone hand in hand, bud.
Really though, I wanted to ask real quick. So I don't think I'd ever heard of Mega Man Zero. Ignore my dog in the background. He's eating a rubber pig and it's making squeak noises.
No, I'm hearing.
Anyway, so I know of Mega Man. I know of Mega Man X. I know of the Mega Man Battle Network, but I don't know if I ever remember Mega Man Zero all that much. So what's that one about?
So Mega Man Zero is like a sequel to Mega Man X, following the Zero character you play in those games, and those were Game Boy Advance games.
Got it.
Yeah, so if you were in the GBA scene, you knew about this one. So the pixel art is a little bit more blown up because it's like from the GBA. So
Yeah.
it's not as like pixel clear pristine like the Mega Man X games that were originally designed for SNES and PS1. So
Yeah.
but Mega Man Zero is like, it's still fun to play those kinds of games, and again, it's just from an academic standpoint, it's just great to see Capcom just preserve these games like this and
I'm
making
really
them
glad
available.
they decided to make them available in like such large collections. So it's like, hey, just buy this one thing and you got it forever, kind of an approach, rather than, hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna put each one out like certain other companies.
Yeah, they're one
for
of yeah,
full
exactly.
price.
But they're just the ones that like they have really done a good job at maintaining most of their back catalog for them
Yeah.
to be like modern. Like they just did it with Street Fighter. They just obviously Mega Man. People are hoping they do it for Dino Crisis eventually if they end up remaking that. That seems like the next big thing after Resident Evil, because they're basically Resident Evil games with dinosaurs. So they're, and DMC, you can get all the DMCs modern. So that's
Yeah.
DMCs from them.
Easy.
Yeah, so they
Some
really
people argue the quality of some of the remasters, but overall, at least you can play them all.
yeah, they brought them to modern platforms. So
Yeah,
and
it's better than some.
yeah, so it's like I'm always standing for Capcom, and I had noticed that because this happened in the week of the Summer Game Fest, and I installed them immediately. The PS5 versions of Resident Evil 7, 2, and 3, I had them installed, so I was like, you know what? I want to clear my clear my backlog. Even though I already played Resident Evil 7 earlier this year, the PS4 version, I want to see the PS5 version. And let me tell you, it's like there are definite improvements in Resident Evil 7 when it comes to faces, and everything else in the game is still the same in PS4 and PS5. You wouldn't miss too much if you only had the PS4 version playing on PS5, but you might as well play it on PS5 because you get it for free. That's so cool. That game is still a game. It's a really great 3/4 of it, and a really bad 1/4 at the end. And
I don't really know what they were thinking at the end there, but the beginning frickin' was killing it. I mean, it brought a lot of people that I knew didn't even like Resident Evil into the series because of all the changes they made.
The thing is that Resident Evil 7, it was the closest a game got to the spirit of the original. And the Baker House is the way it was designed, and everything interconnected there is as close as anything has gotten to the Spencer Mansion. Obviously, the Spencer Mansion is a little bit bigger because it's a freaking mansion, but the tight space of 7, it made you like remember everything. It's like such a tight game in such a small amount of hours to play that it's easy to blow through. Obviously, that once you leave the Baker House and go into like a boat, that loses steam, which is ironic because also Village loses steam near the end in the factory before it recovers.
Yeah.
It recovers with the perspective switch. But yeah, Resident Evil 7 and PS5 I really enjoyed. Then I finally went back to Resident Evil 2, a game I haven't played since I beat the Leon campaign back in January of 2019, when Escape Media used to have a different name and we used to review stuff. Our friend PJ, he took the task of reviewing that game because I was going to review Kingdom Hearts, and at the time we had not made the arrangement you and I do, like splitting, so it was like, I'm not going to be buying this game. He let me account share so I could play it, but I was buying Kingdom Hearts because I knew he wasn't going to play it. So I only had the time to do that initial playthrough and a little bit of the Claire B section, and Resident Evil 2 I always said was a masterpiece, and I still think parts of it are masterpiece, but now having gone through the Claire B section of that game, it's to me it's like unfortunate that one of the coolest things of Resident Evil 2 back in the day was that the game, depending on who you started with and who you did a second playthrough with, the famous A and B routes, the playthroughs would feel drastically different. Parts of the story feel drastically different. Like you repeat gameplay scenarios ad nauseum in the B route that don't make sense from if you're actually following the footsteps of the first character you played. Like you're doing the exact same puzzles after the other character would have done them. You fight the same boss fight after the other character would have beat them, and the only time that it like veers off is the very end. But and to me it's like it just reeks of laziness, and I don't want to call it lazy because the quality of everything on display is not lazy, But it's just something that you notice it more when you do two back-to-back rounds, because you only can imagine it's like, oh man, they almost got there, but they had to stop. But then at the same time, it's like you also mentioned in the chat, it's not PS1 days, which it was easier to do more with like less. Everything in that thing is just so high quality, especially seeing it in actual 4K now and running on PS5. I did like 2 different runs. I played one run with the ray tracing on and the other one with the ray tracing thing off. And ray tracing definitely looks pretty, but you also get you miss a little bit of the crispness from the frame rate that eventually you get used to it. But then when you do a run without ray tracing, it's so smooth to play and you feel it in the movement and in the aiming. I would recommend you just ignore ray tracing. It's like there's some improved reflections. You can actually see your character in some reflections from from glass doors and all that, but it's like, unless you don't care about a game hovering in the 40s and 50s, like the famous it was called the perceptive 60 frames per second, that you would think is 60, but it's like not, and you only feel it when it's not, when you actually play something that's locked. So, but still, Resident Evil 2, excellent game to me. Still, I always debate between this and 4 as the best ones. I wonder how it'll land when the remake lands, but replaying Resident Evil 2 was like, man, I can't wait for 4 next year. I cannot wait.
It's gonna be fun, and I for instance want to really see the tone shift and the changes they're gonna make, because I do absolutely love the cheesiness and the wildness of original Resident Evil 4, but I also want to see what they're gonna do, because the style of Resident Evil 2 remake was so good, even though it played itself almost 100% seriously, that I'm like, I want to see this done with 4 and see how they're going to keep that.
It plays it seriously, but there's still cheesy moments. I mean, Claire literally flirts with you when you find her outside the exploding helicopter. It was
in crazy disaster moments, I'd flirt with attractive people too. You know?
Exactly, yeah. But to me, it's like, for a game that looks like it looks itself to be more serious, I'm glad it had those kernels of
a little bit of cheesiness.
Cheesiness, exactly. But it definitely plays itself way more seriously. And I'm gonna do RE3 next, but I didn't want to like just do 3 Resident Evils in a row, so I went the adjacent route. I actually initially started playing Last of Us Part 2 because I'm right now playing in my father's TV, and I wanted to see how it looked there, because I just love seeing how different TVs do 4K, because they have different panels and all that. But then I realized something with Part 2. I have the same problem I had with Part 2 as I do Uncharted 4. I like my playthroughs to follow the previous playthrough, like the previous entries. I feel they feel just. You
gotta go in order of it. That's gotta be so annoying if you want to play a specific game and you're like, oh, I gotta play everything leading up to this sequel.
It's just, again, like what happened to me is like context of how I initially experienced it.
Yeah.
Part 2 I experienced just as I was finishing Part 1. And it flowed so well for me that I was like, you know what? I want to recreate that. So I put Last of Us Remastered. And I took some screenshots and I sent it in our chat. I'm still impressed how good that thing looks.
For 2013.
For a 2013 game, like with art assets for the 2013.
Myself of that. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I agree what you were saying, because I know you're going to lead into the mechanics side of it, but just the scenery, the feel of it, the main character's texture, and all of that look.
I'm definitely going to go into the gameplay, but yes, just like the look of it, I feel it makes me realize what made me love the Naughty Dog era, the PS3 Naughty Dog era, so much versus the PS4 era in a way. It's like that was still stylish realism that they were doing. They were doing that kind of realism to make up for the PS3's own deficit, and it makes the visual styles of those games seem more memorable in a way. Obviously, the PS4 Naughty Dog games are more photorealistic. Some people prefer that realism because they actually nailed the realism of character, the facial tics, and animation. I think you cannot deny that, and it's obviously big when we saw the next to each other pictures for what remastered looked like and the PS3 version looked like versus what the remake's going to look like on PS5. Obviously, they're applying the PS4 mentality of doing more realism, and they're going to get more nuance there. But I feel like when you go the realistic route, the art direction can sometimes be lost in translation depending on how you look at it. And I think what makes me more excited about going through remaster right now is I'm playing this academically because I'm absolutely gonna play the remake when it comes out in September this year, and I want to like analyze how the levels look right now because they keep mentioning the remake is bringing The Last of Us Part 2's gameplay improvements into one. The thing is, the gameplay improvements also includes verticality. There's barely any verticality in Last of Us 1 as initially designed. So now I'm wondering, are they actually gonna relay out most levels to kind of like implement the verticality that you win from being able to jump to be able to crawl from part 1? That's gonna make playing that remake very interesting because that's the thing they claim, and I feel that's what's gonna justify the remake more, the gameplay. Because I tell you, Melee on remaster sucks because animations are jumpy and like they feel like they skip animation frames when you're like meleeing something, whereas when you're meleeing something in part 2 and even Uncharted 4, everything feels like so smooth and so blended in. Yeah. They added such great blending of animations that just makes the game feel smoother to play in a way. I feel that's gonna be a big benefit when it comes to remaster, but I also appreciate the fact that remaster is available there. There's people that say that they prefer the look of the original. I'm like, okay, it's there. Remake is gonna be there for people that want a different feel for this thing.
I'm more respecting that it's like, all right, this is acceptably not for everybody, but it's like you still have a really good version of the original if you wanted to. I will say I wish that I could keep the style and get the mechanics, but I just can't
different
have
engine,
everything.
and that's the thing. It's different engines.
Yeah, it's like it wouldn't be realistic to keep the or to change the mechanics and keep the style, but I'll accept it.
Yes, and you know what? It makes me realize, like Uncharted 2 visually, it's different from Uncharted 3 and Last of Us. Uncharted 3 and Last of Us use the kind of same animation style because I don't know if you were playing Uncharted 3 for a little bit. When you're in the as soon as you start fighting in that game, like in the bar fight, when you're fighting someone, like the enemy you're punching floats in a weird way before he like snaps back into position. That's the kind of like jumpy animation that I'm telling you that Uncharted 3 and Last of Us had based on that engine, and they've gotten much better with like blending that.
Oh, okay. I see exactly what you're talking. I know what you're saying because it's like the gameplay and the cinematic doesn't quite line up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that because there's certain parts of it. I think a lot of people have their memory of The Last of Us and remastered is different from the reality of it. Where I'm glad that you're probably going back to it. I don't think I could stand to, especially with the remake coming. I think it's gonna burn me out trying to go back to it. So I think I'm gonna just like tap on your encyclopedic knowledge on that and be like, hey, what was this like?
I have the advantage that I know this game is not that long. It's not as long as part 2. It's it's like 10-15 hours shorter. So it's gonna be much easier for me to like be able to play through this because I know that it's like it's obviously not super short, but it's something that I can definitely go through in a day or two. So and then when remake happens, then I'll be able to like hone in if they nail something. It's like I would hope my experience going through Last of Us remake when we get to it in September 2, it's gonna be not quite like when I went to see The Lion King 2019 and compare it to the 1994 animated one, because boy, I tell you, many times I was like, this seems wrong. This line delivery seems wrong. It's you have that sometimes be like, I wonder if I'm gonna have that moment, and maybe you won't because you only have your memory and you haven't gone through the original. But yeah, it's like I'm glad to. I think Last of Us is always that kind of game that I like replaying once a year. I didn't do it last year, so I'm glad I'll be able to again, just because I still like that game a lot. And eventually I'll also do another full replay of Last of Us Part 2 that I haven't done since the week before the Game Awards in 2020. I've only played that game fully 3 times. So, but enough for that, Paul. Unlike last week where we only had like 3 news, we have 7. So
we've got a lot to deal with.
Yes, so press X.
Or some news.
Alright, there was a reason why I call you a winner at the top of the show, because this was one of the big wins. You mentioned it in our addendum and it came out true, because I was feeling a little more pessimistic after it hadn't happened, but After an entire week of some social media drama, it is official. Number one, God of War Ragnarok's release date has been revealed. In both a PlayStation blog post and a 30-second trailer titled Father and Son, the game is officially coming out on
November 9th,
2022. 2 days before the initial release date from Starfield, and a special release day in lore, as it's releasing on a Wednesday, which is the equivalent of Odin's Day. As previously reported by leaker Tom Henderson, the game is also releasing an official collector's edition of the game, which will feature a physical replica of Thor's hammer. You can watch a video of the unboxing of the collector's edition done by Ryan Hurst, the actor who plays Thor in the game, alongside Santa Monica Studios art director Rafael Grassetti. Barring any last-minute catastrophic delays, this will be the first game by Sony Santa Monica that releases during the holiday period. It took a week, Paul. We were putting the positive vibes into the world that you replaying God of War, me replaying it was gonna like create some momentum to manifest this release date, and it happened a week later.
Really glad, based on the context of what we were seeing in the tweets and the comments of the tweets from people that are working with it, it seemed like they had everything set and they were waiting for the green light, as they said. They were only holding back for certain things like the Roe v. Wade stuff that might have been a reason why they stopped their showcase of it or whatever.
Yeah, Sony, like, just to not get too political, like Sony, when there's like big political manifestations happening, right? Whether it was what happened in they tend to like push it, even though they're a worldwide corporation, and what happens in the US doesn't reflect in Latin America, doesn't reflect in Europe or Japan, all that. But they're at least conscious of the poll in the polls, so that's probably why they have pushed it. I like the idea that they also try to like push it a week just to try to like sniff out the snitch. The guy that initially like reported that
is also a very possible assessment, and it sounded like they narrowed down a lot.
Yes. But that's the thing. Tom Henderson is like, he's out there publicly. He has his own name. Like he calls himself a leaker. He is the one that gave us details when we did the addendum last week.
Well, it probably helps that he doesn't work for any of the developers. He just has friends that do.
Yeah, he probably he's very well sourced, like very well sourced.
But because like he's just a journalist, you can't go after somebody who's doing their job with that. But anybody who actually works for things like possibly on YouTube's team, that's where things get a little messy, and that's where you can get fired for stuff like that, I'm sure. So let's hope that they do
and to be fair, because he was referring how Sony usually releases things on a Friday based on recent MOs.
Which sounds like it would track normally. Yeah,
he had already mentioned that Friday, November 4th was going to be the new Need for Speed that EA still has yet to reveal.
And they were going to pick something different.
Yeah, and then the alleged Avatar game, well, not alleged, the Avatar game that Ubisoft revealed at last E3.
Gosh, I forgot that's happening.
Yeah, it's supposedly slated for Friday, November 18th. So he said, if Sony's not willing to step on somebody's like step on someone, basically, they're like the ideal release date would be November 11th, the one that Starfield left vacant. He was kind of right, except that they got cheekier by releasing it on Odin's Day now. So, Paul, give me from 1 to 10. What is your likelihood that this thing gets delayed again?
Honestly, so 0 being lowest, 10 being absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we're at like a 3. If I had to guess, I think it's a 3, because it's like there's always the chance, but a company like Sony Santa Monica, if they're going to hold the cards this close to their chest about something like this, they really want to have it right.
Yeah.
So if they say the date, I feel pretty confident that they're going to stick to it.
And it's good that you mentioned it, because like I mentioned last week, I rewatched the Racing Kratos documentary. There's a section in that documentary for the original 2018 God of War where they were sweating off when they were going to release the game. Originally, their target was March 13, 2018. That's when they were, because they wanted to hit the 11 or was it 12 years? Yeah, it was like it's a 11-year anniversary of God of War 2 from the PS2, because that was the last game Cory Barlog had made with Sony Santa Monica. They were planning for that 2018 game to release day and date in the same year, but then they saw the bug reports that they had like 2,000, 3,000 bugs still like a month before they were supposed to go gold. So they
Smart
asked,
move on their
yeah,
part.
yeah. So they asked Sony and be like, hey, can you give us a little bit more time? And they were able to find the 420 release date as God of War Forever, forever associated for 420. But they did a smart thing that the only time we heard God of War release it was April. That was like, we never heard about the March one. We know about the March one because of the documentary. And
which I really respect in hindsight.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I'm very close to the concept of missed deadlines.
Yes.
But in general,
yeah, a missed deadline is something that has haunted you since 2020.
It's very tiring for the audience to get told a certain day, plan for it financially and availability wise, and then constantly having to change that because the company didn't make that right decision. And I would prefer, in hindsight, had they just waited and said, hey guys, listen, we want to get this right. I'd be a little frustrated in the moment, but in the grand scheme of it all, I'd be feeling a lot better. And this is, I think, a better way to do it. Now obviously we live in a certain day and age where that's really difficult to achieve because you got people leaking details constantly, making it hard for people. Where like in a perfect world, nobody would have said anything about it, and then we would have just woken up one day and we see this problem solved. But of course, everyone's like, "Oh, we think it's June 30th," and then everyone's panicking and beating down doors and sending.
You know what I think happened? I think
inappropriate things.
I think Sony absolutely wanted to release it and like have all this that we saw today on June 30th, but because everyone was already selling, they wanted to be like, yeah, just wait a little bit more. So then now no one knew. Like Jason Schreier didn't know what was happening, Tom Henderson didn't know what was happening, the Snitch didn't say anything. So we wake up today and see this announcement, and that felt very exciting. And that felt very exciting. I was like, oh yes, we got it. So, and now there's like,
it feels pretty good too.
Yeah, it feels, because it's like finally we have the peace of mind. At least the release date is out there. I know there's some people that, some trolls that are like using the excuse of like, oh, you think that they're not gonna delay it again? Look what happened at Last of Us Part 2. So, just for context, comparing Last of Us Part 2 not only to God of War but also Horizon Forbidden West earlier this year. Like Last of Us announced its release date on a State of Play in September. 3 weeks later, they delayed the game till May 29th, and that was something that Neil Druckmann has said that was like a mixed, that completely missed the internal memo of where the game was at when they sent it to marketing. So they were gonna so they were gonna be like, obviously when the release date was originally gonna be February 20th, 2020. 2020 was gonna be the release date. That was like a cool release date that they ended up missing. They kind of like they had people playtesting the game. Like they invited press to be like, this is your first time you're gonna go hands-on with this game. And ironically, when that just for Inside Baseball for you, Paul, the week that happened, you and I recorded our first podcast when it was the Statics radio show.
Wow.
Yeah, so the way that had happened, so it's so funny to think about that. But 3 weeks later that thing got delayed, and then it got delayed again when the pandemic hit. That was when they didn't know if they were gonna have the discs available, because at that point it was like, yeah, we have to, like, we don't know how production's gonna be, because that was when the initial lockdowns had happened. So it got delayed indefinitely, not because the game wasn't ready, it was because they didn't know how they were gonna distribute it. Then obviously the leaks happened, and then they had to like try to like force something, because they were like, yeah, we can't wait more, we have to like put this release out. And then the game released in June 19th. Different circumstances. For Horizon, in 2021, we only knew they were aiming for 2021. We never had a release date. We just heard like when the State of Play for Horizon happened, that we saw in the initial episodes of the X-Button that we did in summer 2021. That thing came and went without a release, like with anything, with like a window or anything. And they were like, we're still aiming for this year, but they didn't put a release date. We heard from Jason Schreier, yeah, the plans to be delayed, and then we got to opening night live on August, and that's when they put a release date, and it was August. It's September, October, November, December, January, February. 6 months of when they revealed that game was coming out on February 18, 2022, and it hit the date. That was 6 months. We are in July 6th. This is coming on November 9th. So
Right.
August, September, October, November. 4 months.
Okay.
Last time they put out a release date was a January blog post for April 20th, so 3 months.
Yeah.
If Horizon gave a 6-month lead to put a release date, I feel like Sony Santa Monica with even less time, they're not gonna delay again.
No.
Because just based on seeing what that process was like in that documentary, we have like the proof there. So
Yeah.
I feel it's like we have to like preface this. That happened in non-pandemic times. So
Yeah.
so you always have to caveat that. So you always have to kind of throw that final percentage caveat of that happening. But their insistence that this was gonna be a 2022 game, and it originally being targeting for 2021, I feel they're insisting on wanting to get this out now, because I think they also want to move on now to the new project.
Yeah, because that's the one that Cory Barlog is working on again.
Exactly. So, and they don't have like 2 separate teams. They tried to do that back in the God of War 2018 and the canceled sci-fi game they had. So now it's more like they want to be like all hands on deck and praise. Is the Naughty Dog? It's like what happened with Naughty Dog. They had 2 projects running concurrently: Uncharted 3 and Last of Us in 2011 and 2013. The thing is, by having those two separate fully staffed teams working on that game, then they didn't realize that they still needed even more people to work on something. So when the Uncharted 3 team was done, they needed to move them to Last of Us because the thing wasn't coming out on time, and that was the first time a Naughty Dog game was delayed in that generation. And then not to mention what happened with Uncharted 4, with the whole Amy Hennig leaving and then having to...
Gosh, that was such a messy situation. I'm so impressed that it doesn't show at all in the final product.
None of the final products. So that's why like that's why I love analyzing things like contextually in time, because it's like Horizon could have slipped again. That was 6 months, literally 6 months, and
I'm glad it didn't.
And it did, and it launched there. It's like it would have ideally been better had they gone gold earlier and launched earlier than it did, because they got devoured by Elden Ring. But they once they actually put out the date, that was the date.
That's
up there.
Another point you mentioned just now with Game of the Year. It's going to be interesting this year, because if God of War makes it and it ends up being as good as we were hoping, it's going to be a really nice contender trifecta between Horizon, Elden Ring, and God of War.
Yeah.
I mean,
3 of the 5 that everyone was saying that was going to be the contenders, because remember, Zelda and Starfield were also in the conversation. Now they're going to duke it out in 2023.
Let them fight later on, and I'm at least I'm hoping it's more of a fight instead of... I mean, if God of War hadn't come out in 2022, we all know it would have just been Elden Ring sweeping everything.
Yes.
But now it's at least like maybe a bit of a fight.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some conversations, but I feel like the way Elden Ring took the world by storm, I think that game's still going to be winning no matter what.
It's a foregone conclusion for at least a few segments, but I hope that God of War, at least like narratively, I don't think Elden Ring is gonna do it at all.
Yeah,
so
if anyone wants to like put Elden Ring for best story, screw you. It's like that game doesn't have a story. It has cool lore and going point to point, but God of War's narrative was so strong the last time around. And it's still the same writer. That's the thing. Even though Cory Barlog is not directing this game, he still wrote the story. He's still intimately involved with...
it's very much connected to the 2018 one, so like we don't have to worry about plot lines getting dropped. It's like it was already there. He just wanted to spread it out so that we didn't have one giant bloated game that took 15 years to make.
Yeah. Now here's something like, because I follow David Jaffe, the original creator of God of War, such a troll about...
Oh yeah.
He still has like connections within Sony Santa Monica. Like his buddies with them. Even though he's no longer like an active game developer, he had heard from someone that they were aiming for this game to be a 45 to 50 hour game.
Lord.
Yeah. So I'm like,
that's got to be plus all the side content. Right?
I would hope, because I feel like this God of War from 2018 was like, I thought it was a perfect length.
How much is like numerically?
It's 25 hours for this 2025 for the story.
Okay.
35-40 with everything else.
Okay, that
all
sounds
side
about right.
content and everything. So
Wow, is that moves pretty fast when I really thought about it, because I burned through that in like 3 or 4 days maybe. And as opposed to Last of Us with all the cheats and stuff, maybe it's because the cutscenes are so long that it feels so much longer.
and it's like a more heavily narrative. Remember, it's more heavy on narrative, while a lot of the narrative in God of War happens while you're playing it.
That is a good point. Very diegetic,
Exactly.
which
So,
I appreciate.
and also its pacing is like you can decide like the game gives you the excuse for you to go explore.
Yeah.
It also gives it tells you we can go this, or maybe we can go do that.
I knew I
Last of Us
bashed
is
the
the
pacing.
narrative. Yeah.
I bashed the pacing for God of War so bad back in the day, and now like sitting it right next to Last of Us 2, it's like night and day, where you have these chunks of like rising action, drop, rising action again, as opposed to like a really solid roller coaster for God of War, where you can feel, all right, we're ramping up, and then when it ramps up, you're like, you get really hyped and it's great, and then it lets you kind of chill out again. And it just feels better, I think, going down. Not to take over the conversation, but yeah. So let's hope that the release date holds. And,
let's hope. I'm really hoping. It's like I want to be excited about something. I'm keeping the hope up that just if Horizon was able to give a 6-month lead time with a solid release and hit it, knowing Sony Santa Monica stressed over this date without actually putting it out there.
I feel like if they did, I think they've got to have something.
Yeah. So as of right now, Paul, that's my most anticipated game this year for us. It's like
I think it's jumped up to mine as well now at this point.
The thing is that here's what's so funny. Like I was re-listening to our most anticipated episode yesterday just for kicks, because I wanted to like talk about the things we missed or not. Your number one punted out of the year.
Wasn't 2 Elden Ring for me?
Yes.
Okay,
that one
so
hit.
At least that one hit.
Number 2 hit for you, and number 3 for you, God of War Ragnarok.
Okay, good. So I'm pretty on it then.
Yeah. So and my number 1 was Horizon. I did it because I knew it was so around the corner, and I was excited for it, so it hit. Destiny 2 Witch Queen was also around the corner. It hit. I cheated there because I knew it was close.
Yeah, true.
Starfield was my number 3. Punted. God of War Ragnarok was my number 4 initially. There. It's still in.
Yeah.
So, and there's other ones down there that I'll finish re-listening to that thing, and we'll revisit it later. But at least in their top,
I'm kind of curious what some of those other ones. I'm sure like they're either obscure, they missed, or they came and went, and I didn't even play it or something.
No, they didn't. One of those didn't came and went. It was in your bottom list, and it got recently delayed. Number 2. In the opposite news of God of War.
That's right.
Square Enix has announced a second delay for the PS5 exclusive Forspoken. They wrote in the announcement via Twitter. As a result of ongoing discussions with key partners, we have made the strategic decision to move the launch date of Forspoken to January 24, 2023. All game elements are now complete, and development is in its final polishing phase. We would like to thank... Yeah. We would like to... We would like to thank you for your continued support and patience on this journey. Your excitement for the game inspires us every day, and we cannot wait to share more about Forspoken with you later this summer. So, Paul, this was originally a May 25th, 2022 game. We're supposed to be playing this now.
These dudes panicked so hard.
Yeah. And then this one was for like, what was the original? Let me see. Forspoken, October.
Wasn't it like February?
No, release date. This was originally then gonna come out on October 11, 2022. Now they're pushing it to January 24, 2023. So, them saying as a result of ongoing discussions with key partners, they were like, some people were theorizing, oh yeah, Sony must have come to them, because remember, Forspoken is a PS5 console exclusive.
Right.
Sony must have that Sony must have come to them and be like, hey,
listen.
Exactly. Hey, listen. We got Last of Us remake on September. We got God of War.
You will not survive.
Yes.
Get out.
What if you push this? But then, like, someone that worked very high in like third-party relationships with Sony was correcting people to be like, yeah, that doesn't happen. It's like that doesn't prevent. That's the kind of thing. Those are the kind of conversations that don't happen. So they say that this whole ongoing discussions with key partners was just them be like, that's just a bluff from them. And
so it really was them panicking and being like, oh gosh, God of War is coming out like
Yeah,
a day before us or whatever.
I'll say this: if it holds, that's an excellent release date for that game, because it's the Dying Light spot, the original Dying Light spot.
That's where you get your sleeper hits.
Yeah, and your new IPs to start, because it's like there will be nothing. Everyone will be hungry for something new. They'll see that and they'll get it, even though
they'll have all their money from Christmas and they got something to spend it on.
I'll say this. Let me check something real quick. Dead Space remake date.
Oh, gosh.
It's on January 27th. So now, Forspoken and Dead Space remake are literally stepping on each other's toes. So
well, I guess that's happening. And well, when's Callisto? No, that's this year still.
Yeah, in December, unless it punts.
Yeah,
they better hit December just to like.
Oh, if they don't, then that's going to be even more of a fight between the old and new studios. Holy crap.
Yeah, I wonder if EA will hold, because remember, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is on March that year.
Yeah. I think unless we see more gameplay, then I'll start worrying about it. But as it stands right now, March is a good amount of time.
Yeah, I doubt that EA, being so fiscally conscious like they always are, would like to put two of their last big games of the fiscal year in the same month. That's why they separated Dead Space for January, and the thing and this for March. So
we know they want to have it out before the end of March. So
exactly for their books. So
yeah, it's got to be then or earlier. So either way, we win.
Yeah, I think they might hold. I would think, just to be like, Dead Space is enough. It's different enough from Forspoken that it could have its own audience.
The people that want to play Dead Space are probably not the ones that want to get into Forspoken and vice versa. I mean, obviously people like us are going to want to play both, but it is a very different style of genre. But I mean, hey, we got to wait a little bit longer for that hip-hop
right, yeah, exactly.
style.
Yeah, I was going to mention. So I'm glad that they found all the people concerned by them describing how she walks as your continued support and patience. But hey, it's like, I feel for Sony. I said this in their chat. Now that we know God of War has a date, it's time for them to do a new showcase. Sony needs to like put dates out and show up new games, because the next two first party stuff for them is Wolverine and Spider-Man. We know Spider-Man is 2023. There's no way Wolverine is also 2023. That should be like 2024, maybe 2025 at the latest. Who knows? They haven't announced anything yet, so they will have to start finally putting something out, because obviously they have third-party stuff that they got exclusive for them that could fill up the spot. Obviously, they got Forspoken. Final Fantasy 16 is supposed to be that summer. I would hope that Forspoken getting punted here doesn't further delay that, because remember, then Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth was for next winter. So
they said 16 is all playable, and that's under polish, isn't it?
Yeah, same as this.
So hopefully that falls under the same category, and they can just do the polish for both, because the heavy lifting is already taken care of.
I would hope.
I don't know. Polish is such a vague term nowadays, and that can mean literally anything. So I feel like some of them hide under that term of like, it's done. We're just polishing it, and that can mean a lot.
Here's what sucks. That's exactly what CDPR said back in January 2020, when the first delay for Cyberpunk happened, when that game got moved from April 16 to September.
And that was an unplayable game, so if that's what polish means.
And that's the thing, they've salted the idea, because I believe that they're polishing. I absolutely believe that. It's just that it sucks that we saw a horrible example in such a high-profile game with Cyberpunk, that these terms have no meaning. It's kind of like what happened with Battlefield. We're going to talk about Battlefield a little later, but with them saying like we're foregoing a single player campaign because we're focusing on our strengths, which is multiplayer, and then they launch and the multiplayer is the worst it's ever been. So it's like it sucks that they're like salting the earth in those terms, because you would usually be like, yeah, that would make sense for you. It's like, yeah, have more time to polish, have time to focus on your strength, and the end product of both those two things that you were anticipating, by the way, ended up like sucking. So hey, you got some wins though. You correcting me on the Loki and Fenrir thing. The thing is that I knew Fenrir was Loki's son, and I wrote it backwards. I was like, crap.
Yep. And it was funny. Zach and I immediately jumped on you for that one. We were like, you fool.
Yes. You finally. Well, that's Forspoken. I'm like waiting for reviews on that one. Maybe that'll be the first one we buy in January. Who knows? Remember, we got our arrangements. So
Yep,
we have our
let's do
ways.
it.
So, number 3, Paul. It appears Ubisoft is ready to speak about their future content plans after an extended period of silence. On July 7th, so tomorrow, or when this goes live, I'm still debating.
Gosh, today's the 6th of July.
Yes.
Anyway.
Ubisoft is finally getting ready to re-reveal Skull and Bones, the pirate game spun off from the popular ship sequences from Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. The game was originally unveiled at E3 2017, and its perpetual silence made it seem like it had become vaporware. The game's allegedly scheduled to release in November 8th, according to leaks.
No.
RIP. Afterwards, in September, they're scheduled to deliver a multi-game showcase Ubisoft Forward, one they haven't done since September 2020. Previously announced games like Mario Rabbids Spark of Hope, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, the remix of Splinter Cell, and Prince of Persia could be potential shows in this showcase. The future of Assassin's Creed teased during Summer Game Fest could also show up here unless it's a separate event.
I don't have anything really constructive to say.
Let's say it. Say it. I want to hear it.
All right. So the Skull and Bones nonsense, it was such a cool concept. Let me see. 21, 20, 19, 18, 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah.
And I like PvP, really cool idea, 5v5, whatever. It sounds like it could have printed money, but at this point, it sounds like it's so low on their priority list that whatever they do eventually put out is going to be like cobbled together over those 5 years that I'm like, I don't even know if I trust it anymore.
Yeah, you know what's funny about Ubisoft? Because I was thinking about it. Eventually, at any point in their cycle, a franchise within Ubisoft always goes through some development trouble that always ends up in 5-year hiatuses. Splinter Cell Double Agent came out in 2006. Man. And then Conviction was immediately revealed there, and then that game had to be overhauled, and the Conviction that launched in 2010 was different than the one originally announced.
I remember reading that in Game Informer, and like the details that they had with it was like a grizzled Sam Fisher
and Daylight,
I remember that so clearly. And then when we got Conviction, I was like, is this a different game? What happened? Because I was like not quite in like the finger on the pulse, but I knew enough about it to be like, this isn't what I thought it was.
Exactly, and it was because of that game had to be rebooted halfway through development.
Like everything they make.
Yeah, and then Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2 was in 2007. Then Future Soldier was the next one.
Yeah.
They announced Future Soldier in 2010. In 2011, sorry, it looked completely different, and the game came out in 2012. So that's another game that had a certain look in initial look, and then it got re-revealed because it had to be like retooled.
And then
that's also 5 years.
We've been dealing with the latest examples of that with parts of the Division, Ghost Recon Wildlands, and Breakpoint. I mean, we've talked those to death, though.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's there's a bit of a trend going on with that. And if it's not Assassin's Creed / even if it is sometimes Assassin's Creed, it seems to get a lot of development hell and problems going forward.
Yeah,
so
but Assassin's Creed rarely has like trouble with like development. That's like the one series that they make sure that the pipeline's always ready. In fact,
their problems with that are different.
Yes, exactly. No, their pipeline was so efficient that they were making games and releasing them as is that eventually one of them hit so bad with Unity that then they had to like rework the pipeline and be like, we have to like pump the brakes.
Which is just a side little rabbit hole. I wish Unity had done better because it's such a cool concept, such a cool like moment, and probably one of the better narratives out of a lot of the others.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
Narrative, no. But
narrative concept of like romantic love interests that are on opposite sides of the war was like a really cool idea.
Yeah,
kind of turned into just the Romeo and Juliet thing, unfortunately. But the idea was really awesome.
Idea was cool. Execution was bad, and then the game goes out of the way to say this didn't matter.
I will still say the best parkour of the whole series with
when it worked.
The detail for that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's going into the mechanic glitching side. I'm saying like the exact details of the animations were really good. Awesome.
And that's the thing. That was like them trying to like add more flair to a control scheme that was showing that was breaking at the seams. All right. It's like the old style of controls that was right trigger AX to like do the parkour and all that was great when you're just going straight and hoping for stuff, but there was not great for precision. They've improved the parkour now with precision.
The 4-player PvE heist was such an inspired idea that I still love that idea, and I wish it was more common.
Yeah.
But yeah,
apparently Infinity's supposed to be that, because remember they're doing a live service Assassin's Creed that we haven't heard much since.
I could be convinced if they show us some gameplay,
Yeah.
but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, yeah. So coming back to where we were talking
to Skull
about.
and Bones. I feel Skull and Bones is just it's in essence a cautionary tale of timing. This would have been great if when this was revealed, it was released immediately, when it was still at the Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
The Black Flag Zeitgeist has long passed 9 years ago. So
people have come and gone in the gaming generations, and like people have not even heard of or played Black Flag at this point.
And people have come to realize that just being in the ship is not the reason why people love that game.
Yep.
People enjoy the fact that their ship come and all that, but they love the fact that you can get out of your ship, invade the other ship, combat, and investigate islands and all that. And people are like, why didn't you just make this a Pirate Creed game? Just like still exploring the islands, like having those on food moments. Maybe that's why it's taking so long, because they're adding that, because last time we checked with this game in 2018, it was a live service. So
I think it's still going to be mostly PvP, so I don't think it's going to be too great in that direction, but I think, gosh, it's such a cool concept, such an awesome idea, and I don't think they're going to deliver on it in the end.
I'll say this now, as for what Ubisoft has, I know that there's been like talk how the reckoning they suffered in 2020 when they fired so many people that were like found out to be like sexually harassing people or like abusive and all that.
That's
like,
kind of wrapped up at this point. We should be starting to see some of the results, right?
Kinda. The way it wrapped up was vague enough that some people are saying that Ubisoft still hasn't fully fixed its culture issues, so they're having more attrition with leads, with many devs leaving. In fact, if you think about it, what was the last Ubisoft game that came out? Was Far Cry 6.
Oh, yeah.
And Far Cry 6 was originally a February 2021 game, and that got pushed all the way till October. And they haven't had anything else.
Yeah.
That's why, like, Assassin's Creed Rift, we read about that like expansion that is turning into its own game, based on Basim, the character from the beginning of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's like it was them panicking and like, we're not gonna be able to release anything soon. Let's just make this a game, because our DLCs are basically games by itself at this point. So
that's starting to make me worry about Rift now, because it's gonna have the mechanics of Valhalla.
We'll see if it's exactly the mechanics of Valhalla. I would say mechanically Valhalla isn't bad. They finally went back to one-hit assassinations.
I'll agree with that, but it still felt so floaty and not varied enough that it just kind of got tiring after. Like, you fight the same way for every single enemy, and because they had so few weapons, it was like you didn't really do much. There's no reason to use different weapons.
The thing is that they'd have many weapons, but I don't think you played enough to like unlock them.
No, I googled this because I wanted to play until I got all the different weapons, and like there's only like 5 or 6 there's types of that, but there's only those like kinds. There's like your mace, there was your spear, there was your shield, your long sword, whatever, and that was like all that you had, and then your hidden blade. So it was like once you unlock those, it was just better versions of that, but all the move sets were the same and stuff. So it just got tiring after a while. Like nothing really changed. But yeah,
we'll see how they do it, because some people are theorizing this may be them Ubisoft testing the waters again to see if the market is ready for like a smaller scale Assassin's Creed game, because Valhalla's big complaint is that it's too bloated. It's why I barely start that game, because I know how big it is, and I'm like, if I'm gonna commit to this, I'm gonna finish all this shorter stuff before I fully dive into this one. Like, I have a friend that I let him borrow my PS4 because I wasn't using it, and I had Valhalla there. He wanted to play Valhalla. He spent 135 hours playing that, and all the DLCs together. And then he tells me, I didn't really like it. I was like, wow. So
I think one last thing I'll mention, and then I'm going to cede the rest of my time for whatever else we have, is with something like Odyssey and Origins, you could have enough like biodiversity from like the oases and the Sahara and all the other details of it, and then obviously Odyssey is like freaking super varied, but Valhalla is just the English countryside, which is very similar, and Norway, which I mean you don't even really revisit unless you go back at the end, but they're so separate that like you can't like go from one to the other. But it's all just like vaguely sort of swamp, sort of foggy, sort of dreary, which is, I mean, obviously real life UK, but also it's like I can go from one side of this place to the next and it looks exactly the same to me.
Yeah.
I think that's another reason why. But anyway, that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah,
we can stop talking.
I had planned on playing Valhalla, and then I went back to Origins with the 60 frames patch, and I got my open world Ubisoft fill for the moment. So let's see whenever I get there, because it's the only Assassin's Creed game I haven't beaten. I've beaten all of them. So, and we'll see if they give us the future with either Rift and this live service monstrosity they should put on us, or whatever other games Ubisoft will have. Like the last Ubisoft Forward was what gave us E3 before that, and then E3 at Cancel That Forward gave us Immortals, and Immortals is really good. So let's see. I crapped on Ubisoft so hard last year with all the moves that they were making.
We had a whole segment each week that was like
F Ubisoft.
Let's see the F Ubisoft segment.
Yeah. They've been relatively quiet this time. I mean, even their NFT initiative just like poofed.
No press is good press for Ubisoft, let me tell you.
Yeah, so, I'm still rooting for them because all Ubisoft is still going to be, like, near and dear to my heart, so.
I think I cheer for them, like, the same way I cheer for Konami, because they have all the IPs I love.
There you go, exactly. Number 4, Paul. If you are wondering what's the current status for the upcoming new Untitled Mass Effect coming from BioWare, here's an update. As relayed by Video Games Chronicle, Mary DeMarle, a former Eidos Montreal writer who last worked on the Deus Ex games and last year's surprise hit Guardians of the Galaxy, has recently joined BioWare and was confirmed to be officially working on Mass Effect by director Michael Gamble. While the prospect of this writer joining the ranks bodes well for the game, it should also be a warning sign of how early in development this new Mass Effect is, so don't expect it anytime soon. The next game from BioWare is Dragon Age Dreadwolf, allegedly releasing within the next 18 months.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in that. Wow, so
what was the best
worked on the Deus Ex games
and Guardians of the Galaxy? What was the best thing on those games?
The story.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So that was like that caught my eye immediately. I mean, they obviously have the gameplay down, and I will trash on Andromeda all day, every day, but the shooting was fantastic.
Yeah, that was the best part of that game.
And it actually has made me want to every once in a while look at it and I'm like, no,
you should.
I can't.
You should. It's fixed. It's fixed. It's a competent game, but it's too long. You have better time. There's better games that you could like go back to.
That's where I kind of go into it. It's like if I wanted to scratch that itch, there's better games I could go. I mean, now I could just replay the Mass Effect games if I really wanted to. But anyway, so all that is to say, this actually is really interesting that they're hiring that writer, and that, I mean, I kind of expected Mass Effect's going to be a while. But
their writing in Andromeda was like such a step back from the original trilogy.
Definitely.
That I'm glad that they're hiring someone that proved that she could kind of work in that kind of game, because I said like some parts of Guardians of the Galaxy, even though it wasn't quite like that game, reminded of Mass Effect. The relationship building between you and the Guardians, that's straight up Mass Effect.
Yeah.
It's
I was going somewhere with that. I lost it. Continue.
Yeah. So we'll probably play this game in 2028 if we're still alive. So
if we survive all the other nonsense, yeah. Exactly. But I mean, I'm that's what it was. The fact that BioWare was considering shelving the entire series after Andromeda's failure, I'm just glad they're working on it again. I'll take it. Just take your time, figure it out, and then come back to me when it's ready. Yeah,
they figured that out with the Legendary Edition, how well that did. It reviewed super well, and it sold so well. That's what told them, hey, people still love Mass Effect. So, and they did right by those remasters. So they should know that you still need to put out something that's good out there. Not shoddy, like we're gonna talk sometime later.
Yep.
Number 5, Paul. I mentioned it like 2 stories ago, but it would appear whatever is next for Battlefield following the catastrophe that is Battlefield 2042, it will include a single-player campaign again. As spotted by BGC, it would appear the new studio EA opened in Seattle with former Bungie designer Marcus Leto is specifically hiring for a design director to helm the single-player portion of the series. Said design director would, quote, orchestrate the mission design, narrative, game mechanics, and systems to create the highest quality experience possible. After scrapping plans for a single-player portion for Battlefield 2042, citing a desire to focus on the studio's strengths in multiplayer, this is an interesting about-face for the future of the franchise.
This strikes me as, oh crap, we did everything wrong. Maybe we should revisit that thing we dropped.
Yeah.
And I mean, at least if the multiplayer was ever having a problem, you could fall back on the single player. Battlefield 4 was able to do that.
Yeah.
And I would say that probably helped save it for me personally, because I would be like, all right,
at least
multiplayer kind of sucks.
Yeah,
I'm going to go play the story. And it was fun, at least. This crazy story of people trapped in China being hunted down was like really kind of cool. And there's like a derelict aircraft carrier and stuff. It was awesome. So it was like, all right, this is neat. I'll at least play this until that's ready. But then 5 was like, oh, we got these little snippets so you can play.
Same
and
as
we got
1.
new stories coming out, and they brought like one.
Yeah.
And that was it. Oh gosh.
They had the same amount of snippets in Battlefield 1 as they did in Battlefield 5. The difference, because Battlefield 5 was launched unfinished, they hid under the it's a live service where we're adding content over time, but no, they were just finishing the game as it went along. They just put out the game out because they needed to put it out. What makes me interested in this is that the one that did the campaigns before was DICE, the actual DICE. Right. This is a new unnamed studio that EA had made with someone that worked at Bungie. Marcus Leto worked at Bungie all the way till Halo Reach as a campaign, as the combat designer. So I know Marcus Leto knows his thing. Like he knows his chops. Especially that was a time where Halo was equally as strong in multiplayer as it was in single player. Their campaigns were not throwaways. Technically, they still are not. The only time that they did a throwaway campaign was Halo 5 in a way. So Marcus Leto leading this, and he being in charge of now what the future of Battlefield can be. Maybe this is the hashtag. This is the way. Putting Mandalorian helmet.
Yeah.
DICE should never have to worry about having to do any campaign ever again. Have the studio do it, and insert it in whatever game you put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but what about like the jumping around with eras? Do you think that like they would at least need to have that kind of a solid idea?
They're jumping around what?
Or like the era, like to know what style of game it's going to be first.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be inter-studio like interactions that you know what the theme will be.
Okay.
But this could be like it's like what happened with Battlefront 2. DICE didn't make the campaign. EA Motive did it. They used all the tech.
Yeah, I mean, they had so much extra details about that it didn't really matter how the campaign played out. But yeah, like I see what you mean, where as long as they know certain key details and like, here's the weapons, have fun with it.
Yeah, I think that would be known from the very beginning. I think absolutely that wouldn't be a problem, but
yeah,
I just feel like now it will have a dedicated team specifically to make that side of the game.
I don't know, part of me just thinks about the disconnect between the campaign of Battlefield Hardline and the multiplayer of Hardline, and just how wild that nonsense was.
Yeah.
I hope they never bring back police versus robbers and the deep socioeconomic problems
we have. Because that's the thing, even when that game was coming out in 2014, what was the big police thing that had happened? Was it Ferguson?
I don't even remember what it was, but I already felt like this seems like a bad idea, guys.
Yes.
I don't know.
And I feel bad because Visceral was like pulled. They were doing a pirate game.
Oh my gosh.
And they forced them to make that Battlefield game. So
I regret even bringing it up. It makes me sad. So yeah, I think what you're saying actually has some water, because it's like, just let another team that's really good at it focus on a campaign, and then just do your other thing and focus only on that, and then come together at the end.
I think what's next for Battlefield also is like EA should like eliminate Battlefield as a series that has to hit a fiscal year.
Yeah, they need their time.
Yeah, it's clear that they don't like to try to make a Battlefield game that's good. You absolutely need the time. That's why Hardline happened. They gave DICE extra time to do Battlefield 1.
Yeah. And I mean, then you also look at something that succeeded, like Battlefield 4's like 2 or 3 years of DLC, and people were willing to buy those expansion packs for any price because it gave you so much cool stuff. And I know I was one of those people that got suckered into it, and I bought it all. But by the end, I was like, "Oh, I'm really glad I have all of this."
Yeah,
'cause
Battlefield
this is
4
a
is
lot of
like
stuff.
a lot of people are still playing Battlefield 4. A lot of people went back to Battlefield 5 and protest. They're still playing it, and more
Thank
than
God for
Battlefield
server lobbies, being able to choose where you play to actually make sure you have people playing the game.
But they absolutely need, like, right now the name Battlefield is absolutely tarnished. It is a joke.
It is damaged.
It's damaged goods. So it's like the next Battlefield game cannot be like a fiscal year rush thing that they had to put out on the holiday. And put it like, just think about it. I mentioned it's like they didn't do a campaign because DICE was like focusing on their strengths. Just focusing on their strengths. That's the game that we got. So
right. I wanted to throw this one thing. I just had this like vision of dehydration of an alternate world where they partner with Hideo Kojima to create the next Metal Gear Solid as the solo game.
Wow.
And then the multiplayer is theirs. So it's like you got Punished Snake running around the battlefield as a skin. I don't even think it would be a good idea, but it just sounds so funny that I had to put that in there.
I was not playing that. So,
I would totally play that. Gosh, that sounds hilarious. So anyway, that's all I was gonna say with that.
So Battlefield, you got a tough road ahead of you. So
that they do.
Number 6, Paul. If you've been wondering what is the status for native PS3 backwards compatibility following the relaunch of the PlayStation Plus service, here's some interesting tidbits. As relayed by BGC and spotted by GameRant, a patent was spotted that seems to show old Sony hardware, such as old media remotes, DualShock controllers, and even a handheld console likely to be the PSP Go, being used via emulation with a PlayStation 5.
Oh.
BGC writes, what makes the patent even more interesting is that the peripherals mainly appear to be from the PS3 era, which could suggest that this is part of Sony's reported effort to emulate the system, which has been relegated to streaming only as part of Sony's recent PlayStation Plus rebrand. While it's possible to imagine that Sony is exploring how to make this older tech work through emulation due to none of the equipment aside from PS Move ones currently being available for purchase, it may be simply a process for emulating the functionality of these items in software rather than compatibility with the PlayStation 5. Considering one of these patents used to show they could make PS1 games work on PS5 and adding trophy functionality to all games, which bore fruit in a couple of the classic games released in the premium tier of PS Plus, this is a good sign of Sony catching up and doing the work to provide a native solution to its much maligned PlayStation 3. I remember seeing that PS1 patent way back. Them saying how this could work in modern times, same as the PS2, and how they could add trophies to it. Lo and behold, the PS1 and PS2 classics that are releasing right now, in its majority have trophies. So it's like, you know that they're actually testing this.
That's actually kind of cool, because I was really worried that it's going to be one of those unicorn situations where, oh yeah, PS3 backwards compatibility, it's going to happen one day, and then you're just like, I don't know, guys, this might not be, because like, not that it's not possible, but that Sony would be too prideful to actually just use emulation and all of the tools that exist by now to make that easier. And some of them still struggle with emulation, but it would be better than the stream style that they have right now.
Yeah. To be fair to them with streaming, like, people have been testing the latency of the streaming. People have actually been impressed how crisp it actually feels, considering all things. Where it's suffering is in the video quality. So it's still like native would still be the ideal way, but I'm glad to hear that some people were like the YouTuber Mr. Matty Plays. You can look at 18 video he did like 2 or 3 weeks ago where he tested the service, and he did the he tried the Ninja Gaiden game streaming through the PlayStation Plus Premium, and he was showing like he was doing in Ninja Gaiden you have to do like a very specific timing with L1 to like counter, and he was getting it, so it was like, oh, it's actually working. But he was saying the video quality is smudged, so
well, I mean, so that was what the PS3 wasn't.
But that's the thing, more
jokes
smudged.
aside,
More smudged because it's streaming. Like, remember, streaming quality,
right?
It's way different than something native. So
yeah, I shoot, this might actually be a step in the right direction then. So, I mean, patents people don't do those patents for no reason, obviously. So I'm really hoping that this means that they're really going somewhere with it. So
yeah. Remember, it was reported that native PS3 backwards compatibility was in active work by Sony. So
that's a good point. Now the question will become, are they going to let us put our PS3 games in like Xbox does, or are they just going to make us spend $40 for games we should already own?
That would be interesting, because PS3 games are Blu-ray discs. There's a Blu-ray disc on the PS5, so
and they could do it. It's going to be agreed, and I don't really trust them, frankly.
The thing is that there's like there's this YouTuber from a YouTube channel called Moore's Law is Dead that has high, like, he has sources between the people that work in this kind of things, that he heard that Sony has gotten PS3 native PS3 backwards compatibility working. The thing is that it has to be like an individual emulator per game.
Oh my gosh!
Because
they gotta build emulators per game.
Per game. So because of the way that everyone, like, the PS3 was such a disaster to develop for, that every developer, to try to make their game work, would have to use different sides of the system to make things work. Some games use the SPUs, some games were RAM intensive to try. They were cheating the system to make the games work. That's how bad it was. So that's why it cannot just be like a blanket. It's everything in the same hardware. It was like how everyone tried to use the hardware differently. So that's why they're trying to figure out a way that can be efficient. But apparently they got it working. It's just, imagine having to do an emulation solution individually per title.
That does not sound fun. At all. But I mean, if they could, and it's basically okay, so not basically, but Xbox told everyone that there was going to be a similar process where they're like, all right, we're going to just keep rolling out periodically things that'll work. And so they could do that and just say, hey, listen, we're going to start with these and we're just going to keep plugging away until we've got all the ones we can get to work. But I still worry that they're just going to be like, hey, now it's available on the PlayStation Network. Spend $20 and get it.
I'll say this, like, I bought the Toy Story 2 PS1 game way back then, and it showed up in my library already available, and I played through it 3 weeks ago in a Saturday, and it worked.
That's right, because you were able to get the downloaded versions of those. So that's honestly crazy. I forgot. Did we even say that on recording?
I don't think. I forgot.
I think
to
we just mentioned
it.
Because that's crazy that so you had bought that on the PS3 back forever ago, which was originally a PS1 game being emulated. So the fact that now works on your PS5 with no extra purchase does give me a huge silver lining with this.
And crossing fingers that they do that for.
If they continue that and just allow people to play games that, like, they would have to obviously tell people, because they didn't say anything. And you just woke up one day and it was like, hey, my Toy Story game is here. What the heck?
Exactly,
so that would be cool if they start talking about it, and then people can actually say, hey, please just let us play all these games we own.
What's interesting is that Sony is doing like a half-step approach, because there are games that, for example, Resident Evil Director's Cut from PS1 is available on PlayStation Plus Premium. But people that bought the digital version of that game way back then, it's not showing up in their library. That's just exclusive to the premium service. So there's still a weirdness happening there, that some things, they'll probably hold some games ransom to be like, if you really want to play this, subscribe. Kind of like the Nintendo route. But then Siphon Filter, Wild Arms, they're like, there it is, the devil. The
cameo. This is the face of somebody who doesn't have trust in Sony.
So it's baby steps. They should have done this earlier, but
absolutely.
But it's like, hey, they're doing it now. If they can start doing all this work, so that then they don't have to worry about like that library from forever going forward. This is when you have to do the work.
Please, give me a reason to go find old PS3 discs on Amazon or something.
Because then it's just the only hope is that there's gonna be remasters, or you're hoping that they're gonna do remasters of old games, and sometimes those remasters get canned. Like number 7,
some old love.
The number 7, Paul. If you were excited at the prospect of playing Grand Theft Auto 4 and the original Red Dead Redemption in remaster form sometime in the next year or two, there's some bad news. According to Rockstar Insider Test 2, as relayed by both Kotaku and VGC, it would appear a remaster for Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption was actually in the cards, but were allegedly scrapped, with the insider suggesting the poor reception to the disastrous GTA Trilogy remasters may have led to the decision. Never mind the fact that the Trilogy remaster sold around 10 million copies by February of this year, which shows there was actual demand for older Rockstar games. Instead, the insider reports Rockstar has decided to double down on the next game in the Grand Theft Auto series, which everyone is calling Grand Theft Auto 6.
I'm not happy about this whole process. Oh, the audacity for them to be like, oh, they don't like remakes, I guess. We're just gonna not do that anymore. And I'm trying to talk as slow as possible to not start slurring my words because of the rage that is filling my soul right now.
Yeah.
They put zero effort into these remasters of all these 3 games, which are just terrible. And as we've seen and shown, people wanted them and would love them. And like the rain was like, what was it? Top of
it
stuff?
Was like, it was rendering beneath the ocean.
That's what it was. Oh my gosh, just the lack of follow through, the lack of focus, the lack of resources devoted to it. And then when they sold terribly, they were like, oh, what? Y'all
that's what's funny. It didn't sell terribly. These things came out in November, and by February it already sold 10 million copies.
Oh my gosh, did it really?
Yes.
So it did well.
Exactly.
What's freaking wrong with these people?
Yeah. It's like there's demand for those old games. There is. And but there was like the shoddy work they did and the actual quality of those things. Now they're using, oh yeah, they didn't like this, so we're not doing it. It's like, you did the bad work. What were you expecting of the reception?
Yeah. This is frustrating because, I mean, 2 games that definitely need the love are Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption. I mean, in certain ways they're great, but you could always get a nice fresh coat of paint on both of them, maybe some quality of life. So, oh man.
I'll say this, it's like, this is again an example of why I'm so glad that Xbox, for all they do wrong, they invested so much on the backwards compatibility, because Grand Theft Auto 4 automatically runs at 60 frames per second if you play it on Series X and S, because it has unlocked frame rate that runs higher the more powerful hardware you run it on. So that game runs so smoothly now. At backwards compatibility, you can play now if you have that game, whether it's disc or digital,
which is great. And I gotta give Xbox props and credit for this completely.
And the original Red Dead had a pad. They actually went in and coded that game to look in 4K if you had an Xbox One X or a Series X at no extra cost. It looks like a modern game.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really glad that they did all this, because I played it on the Xbox One. And I played it before all the updates, I think, because it looked kind of rough and it made me not want to keep playing the game. So the fact that they did that made me really happy, and I just never went back to play it. But my gosh, the crap that Rockstar pulls with Take-Two, and this is like classic example of people looking at the wrong stuff and learning the wrong lessons and just deciding to axe things that people like. And when they don't have any connection to the art that they make, that is a huge problem. And that's why all these big companies are just going to keep raking in money and destroying things that they create along the way, just like nothing. So it just really upsets me.
It's really upsetting because it's like those were in the cards, and it's like they're reacting to the situation wrong. This should have been like, there's money to be made. Let's just do it right this time. But instead they're like, no, let's just put all our focus on GTA 6. Which, look, GTA 5 is like the best-selling game of all time at this point, I think. So it's like, that game's gonna print so much money. So I can see why they could be like, let's just try to double down to get this out quicker as soon as possible. My big thing is I remember where Take-Two was like, we're gonna release 50 something games within the next 2 or 3 years. And I tell you, it's like the easiest way to do this is remastering games and mobile games. So it's like, good luck filling up your desires.
It's gonna be mobile games. Who would have thought that was coming?
Exactly. So
oh Lord.
Oh well, Paul, and with that we conclude this week's episode of the X Button. Eventually, like, I want to insert something at the end of the show where we read like because we did this for a few and then we dropped it. What games are out in a certain week right now? Nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So But that's something that
Maybe once things ramps up, we can always just read that off.
Exactly, yeah. You just be like, if you're here, this is what's coming out and all that, just so that we don't just close this show up as immediately as the news end. So, and that can also help keep track of stuff that comes out week in or week out. So,
True.
But not today. But Paul, where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I post anything that I draw, and lately it's been gameplay segments of either Last of Us 2 or God of War, of me breaking the game or doing something really cool in it.
What's funny is that the games break on you in a way that they never do for me.
Games always do. I have just a skill to do that, and part of it's really fun because that's where I actually grew my love for the behind the scenes of games.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you would be good in QA because
right?
I never find those kind of glitches that you need to be a QA
Actually,
tester.
I never mentioned it. I found out one of my high school buddies does QA for Apex Legends for EA, and so he told me about the latest guy before he was announced.
And I told you I have a friend that does whatchamacallit, QA at Naughty Dog.
Man, we might need to get into that business.
Yeah. I'll have to ask him,
anyway.
what do you need to do to become a QA tester there? So.
My guy said he just randomly applied to EA, and they're like, yeah, okay, you could be a quality assist, whatever it's called, assurance, and they like sent him a gaming PC and stuff. It was weird. Anyway, where can they find you, Alejandro?
A_Drew Segovia on Twitter, Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram, and written content at thecriticalcorner.com. Still need to write something new there. So, Paul, it's always a pleasure. I'll see you next week. Hope to see you online. Everyone, thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, give us a like, subscribe, share it with people. Let us know what you liked or you didn't. And stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, press X
To play. Good night, everybody.
See you later, and hasta luego.